Welcome back, fearful friends, to Carrion Creature Feature, your gateway to the darkest realms of horror. I'm your ghastly host, Aura, beckoning you into a world where nightmares come alive. Tonight's episode, we explore the terrifying knowledge of an ancient evil that is slowly drifting towards our world. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and ring that infernal bell to summon notifications from the abyss. Join our Legion of the Damned and stay tuned for a relentless onslaught of horror content. George watched the television intently. Steve James, armed with a machine gun, blasted evil henchmen in the movie American Ninja. There was a nostalgia that came from the old 80s action flicks that made him forget the stresses of the world. Michael Dudikoff was now slicing through ninjas as the might of the United States Army was brought to bear on a bad guy with a horrible French accent. He longed for his youth, realizing that, with the wisdom he now possessed, he wouldn't squander it on frivolous romantic notions. Oh no, George would be the motherfucker servicing all those poor lonely housewives just waiting to get their rich hands on his sweet action. But at the ripe age of 56, his days of picking up women and living life in the fast lane were far over. He reached back, brushing the thin, wispy hair that barely covered his bald head. Growing tired of the movie, he switched the TV channel to a man complaining about hemorrhoids. For a few moments, he thought about having another whiskey, but looking at the empty bottle on the coffee table, he decided against it. Digging deep into his pocket, he retrieved his lighter and took a half-smoked joint from the ashtray sitting on the floor. The screen of the television went black for a moment, prompting George to sit up and swear. Why the hell was his internet so shitty, he wondered? But then remembered, he was 2 months behind on the service. The screen came back to life, allowing him to sit back and relax for the moment. A defined older man with glasses appeared on the screen, an expression of concern on his face. George thought about changing the channel, but there was something about the man that made his thumb pause over the button. "Hello, George. My name is Dr. Starr," the man said, as he slowly walked across a room full of books and sat at a large wooden desk. George shifted in his recliner and tilted his good ear towards the TV. Had the man really said his name? The doctor raised his hand slowly, a gesture of calm before he spoke again. "Yes, I know your name, George, but don't be frightened. Today is a great day for you and me." George instantly switched the TV off as a surge of panic welled up in his body. He stared blankly at the black screen, heart thumping as he tried to calm his nerves. Was he going crazy, he thought, looking at the unlit joint in his hand. George exhaled and stood up from the recliner. There was no way he was going down this rabbit hole. He turned to exit the living room with the intention of sleeping off whatever this encounter was, when the TV flickered back to life. The light bounced across the room, causing him to freeze in mid-step and look back at the screen. The doctor stared back, a warm smile pursing his lips. "You are not crazy, George. Nor are you experiencing a hallucination. Please sit down and allow me to speak with you for just a few moments," Dr. Starr said, gesturing back towards the recliner. George looked at the recliner and then slowly sat back down. A feeling of unease, coupled with fear, had already started to sober him up. He wondered if maybe the joint had been dipped in LSD. The doctor's voice returned, this time slow and soothing. "Good, George. I'm glad we could have this moment. I'm so glad. I want to give you a reward for being so brave." The doctor presented a small black pyramid in his left hand. The small sculpture seemed to steal the light around it, as if it were a tiny black hole. "Do you know what exists beyond time and space? Are you familiar with the concept of trans-dimensional entities?" the doctor said, his voice still soothing, as he held the tiny pyramid closer to the screen. What? Is that like some type of gay bar? George said, genuinely confused. The doctor went rigid for a moment, a look of hate appearing just briefly, before it was once more replaced by soothing calmness. The doctor chuckled and then leaned forward. I forget that so many have yet to have the privilege you are having now. I don't blame you for your ignorance. How would you understand the vastness of cosmic power? George sunk deeper into the recliner, his eyes now watching intently on the television screen. The mood in the room had shifted. He now felt light and warm, with tingles vibrating throughout his body. It was a good fuzzy feeling, the type you would get on a warm, sunny afternoon. That's right. Relax, George. Concentrate on your breathing. Let that warm sensation work through your body, the doctor said, moving his hands with the words. He could feel himself slipping further into a relaxed state. The euphoric sensation pulsated into his hands and feet. His eyes grew heavy as the camera shifted from the doctor back to the small black pyramid he held. There was a strangeness about the item, a heaviness that whirled inside his mind and echoed into dreams. Then, he was floating in an infinite sea of black. This was outer space, a near-perfect void far beyond the confines of Earth's atmosphere. He looked to his arms, finding them shriveled and black from frostbite. Surprisingly, there was no pain, yet he felt unbelievably cold. Beneath his necrotic curled feet, the bright blue earth presented itself, awashed in the warmth of the sun. The sensation he felt earlier was still with him, making the surreal experience akin to watching a horror movie on mute. There was fear, but there was also wonder and amazement. In the distance, he could see the moon shrouded in darkness, something that confused him as the sun was reflecting off the earth below. Maybe his frozen eyes were giving up the ability to see clearly. He floated weightless for a few minutes, a serene peace despite the horrific state of his body. Above the moon, he could see the sharp outline of points, a vast blackness in the shape of a pyramid, many sizes bigger than the Earth. George couldn't comprehend how big the structure was, and looking at it was horrible. He wished his eyelids worked so he could look away, but the knowledge that it existed brought with it dread. His mind began to spiral as his heart raced. The pyramid silently floated closer to the earth, bringing with it a feeling of impending doom. All those people down on the surface were oblivious to the evil slowly drifting towards them, something ancient and unwavering in its cycle of madness. He wanted to scream. His frozen lips tore open, lungs gasped for breath, finding nothing but the vacuum of space. Vocal cords stretching until hot blood gurgled up in his throat, yet he could not scream. The doctor's voice rang clearly in his head. "Now you see the gift I have bestowed upon you." George sat up from his living room floor, screaming as gulps of stale air filled his lungs. No longer was he adrift in space, the cosmic landscape giving way to the familiar sights of his home. Squeezing his eyes shut, he pressed the lingering nightmare from his thoughts. His head hurt, and his throat was dry, all symptoms of one too many whiskeys. The television displayed the national news, a courtroom, and then a picture of an astronaut. George stood to his feet and rubbed the crust from his eyes, making out the text below the picture. Commander of the Venus 1 mission, first man to commit murder in space. George sat back down on the couch, turning the volume up as he continued to nurse his aching head. The Supreme Court found Commander James Weston guilty of 7 charges of murder. NASA officials claim the bodies of the Venus 1 crew are now orbiting the Earth. This comes as a shocking conclusion after a successful 5-year mission to Venus. The mention of bodies in orbit brought his mind back to the disturbing dream. What type of lunatic shoves his crewmates out the airlock, he wondered. Then, a grainy photo of a large triangle popped up on the TV, the anchorman changing topics. In other news, astronomers are submitting pictures of a large shape being seen in the sky. Scientists from the University of Chapel Hill claim the object appeared out of nowhere last night, despite deep space telescopes and satellites tracking in the area. One theory is the object is absorbing the sun's rays as it moves closer towards our moon, making it difficult to see through lenses. George dropped the remote control, panic taking over his body. His mind thrashed like a storm at sea. He stumbled to the window, ripping the blinds down until sun poured into the room. Down the road, children laughed as they rode bikes, while his neighbor across the road washed his Z28. He searched the blue sky until he saw it, a tiny black speck moving slowly towards him. Trembling souls, we hope you survive the cosmic journey through Carrion Creature Feature. If your nerves are still intact and your heart beats with a newfound rhythm of fear, consider this a testament to your resilience. As we conclude this nightmarish expedition, we extend our deepest gratitude to the bravest among you, the true believers in the macabre. Remember, the terrors may subside for now, but the shadows always linger, waiting for the next tale to unfurl. Before you retreat into the safety of the mundane, take a moment to leave your thoughts, fears, and suggestions in the cryptic comments below. Like, share, and summon your fellow thrill-seekers to join our dark congregation. Don't forget to hit that bell, the portal through which the ghastly echoes of future horrors will reach you. Until our next descent into the abyss, stay haunted, stay vigilant, and always expect the unexpected. This is Carrion Creature Feature, bidding you farewell.